Today on Face the Nation, President Obama's mortgage bailout plan. Who will it actually help? And bailing out the states. Will governors take the stimulus money? And will it help them to solve their deficit problems? President Obama came out with a multi-billion-dollar foreclosure bailout plan last week, and a lot of people who can't afford their mortgages are wondering if it will help them. Who does get the money and why? We'll ask Housing Secretary Sean Donovan. Then we'll turn to the states and the stimulus package. Some Republican governors say they'll pick and choose what money to take. We'll talk with 3 governors about where they stand. Republican Mitch Daniels of Indiana, Democrat John Corzine of New Jersey, and Democrat Ted Strickland of Ohio. I'll have a final word on something else to worry about, Mexico. But first, the mortgage bailout. Who gets the money? On Face the Nation.
Face the Nation with CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now from CBS News in Washington, Bob Schieffer.
And good morning again. We start with the Housing Secretary, Sean Donovan, who's just new to Washington, but has been dealing with housing problems for a long, long time. He used to work for Mayor Bloomberg in New York, among other things. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming. Let's get right to it. The president unveiled this plan. It is designed to help people who are having trouble with their mortgages. It actually provides subsidies to people who don't have much equity in their homes. But there was a storm of criticism almost immediately. People began to say, and it spread across the internet, why should people who made bad judgments, why should people who made loans they knew they couldn't afford, why should I now be subsidizing them when I have played by the rules, made a mortgage, made a loan that I could afford? Why should it be up to me to subsidize these people? So let's start with that. Why should other people be subsidizing these people who made bad judgments and bad decisions?
Well, first of all, what I want to say, and the president made this very clear on Wednesday in Phoenix, is that we have designed this plan to make sure that the folks who did take advantage of people, whether it was lenders or speculators or flippers, that they're not eligible for this plan. Only owner-occupants who live in their homes are eligible, and we're going to make very sure by checking incomes, by verifying. We're not going to have any more of these liar loans where you didn't even have to present your income, or you could easily present income that wasn't checked. We're going to have a very strict program to make sure that people who participate are what they say they are, and we're not going to benefit those who took advantage before.
But why is this fair to people who have played by the rules? What's in it for them?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I think there's been a lot of focus on a piece of the plan, but without either reading or looking at the broad plan. There are 3 parts to the plan. First, the largest and in many ways the most important part of the plan is up to $200 billion that will help keep mortgage rates low in this country for everyone. Today, we have mortgage rates, because of actions that the Obama administration has taken, that are as low as we've had in a generation. We have to keep those mortgage rates low, because anybody who's got good credit, who wants to go out and buy a new home or refinance, they benefit by having those low mortgage rates. That's the biggest, most important part of the plan.
And that's money you're going to funnel into Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
It's a backstop to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who today are responsible for about 2/3 of all mortgages that get made in the United States. So it's critically important. We have a longer term discussion to have about what we need to do with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. There were plenty of mistakes made in the past, but right now, to get us out of this current crisis, we need low interest rates. There's broad bipartisan agreement on that, and this is a way to do that. So that's the first part of the plan, and that benefits everyone. The second part of the plan is we're going to allow folks who are playing by the rules, who have made every payment, but are underwater because housing values in their neighborhoods have declined, to refinance. Today, they may be holding a 7 or 8% mortgage rate, and they can't benefit from today's 5% rates. Again, they played by the rules. Only people who are current on their mortgage can qualify for that refinancing. And then the third part of the plan is our modification plan. That's $75 billion. And that is the one directed at people who are struggling the most. But let's be clear, this may have started as a mortgage crisis, But today, what's really driving foreclosures is people losing their jobs, not being able to pay for their health care. We have millions of families across this country, through no fault of their own, that are in trouble on their mortgages. We're going to stop speculators from getting in the plan, but we've got to make sure that folks who have played by the rules and are struggling can get some help. And by the way, let's remember that every time there's a foreclosure, a next door neighbor loses value in their house too. This plan, if we don't move forward with it, we think we'll see an additional $6,000 drop on average in every single homeowner's house in America. So this benefits, by stopping foreclosures, this benefits everyone.
Do you have any idea how many foreclosures you can forestall with this?
Well, our estimate is that if we take no action today, we've got about 6 million foreclosures coming over the next 3 years. We had 2.2 million last year. We're looking at a rate this year of close to 3 million foreclosures this year alone. So the problem is getting worse. 45% of all sales of homes in the U.S. in December were distressed sales, and that's just pushing values lower. So we think we can stop with this plan, with just the modification portion, 3 to 4 million foreclosures. We're not going to save everybody, but we can save the folks who are willing to keep paying and work hard. And in addition to that, we can help between 4 and 5 million homeowners who are underwater but are current on their mortgage, they're doing everything right and playing by the rules. We can help 4 to 5 million of those refinance as well to lower rates. On average, they'll save $2,600 a year.
Let me just ask you this, because as I understand the plan, you will help people who the value of their house has gone down and they suddenly find they owe more on their mortgage than the house is worth, but only to a certain point. It's my understanding that it would be just slightly under what the mortgage is worth now. Those are the people you could help, but people who have seen a huge drop in how much their house is worth, this plan won't help them. Now, why not?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that question, because there has been some confusion about that. The refinancing part of our plan is for people who are between about 80% and 105% loan to value. What that means is their mortgage is somewhere between 80% of the value of their house and 105%. The folks who are more deeply underwater than that, let's say they've got a house that's worth $200,000 and they've got a mortgage that's $250,000 or more, the truth is just a refinancing isn't really going to help them. Those are the folks who are eligible if they're going to make their payments for our modification program, where we will bring down the payment to an affordable level. So the 3 different aspects of the plan work together to reach everyone who we think is deserving and needs help today.
You're also talking about encouraging Congress to allow a bankruptcy referee to actually modify a mortgage, which is something they haven't been able to do. In other words, you'd reduce the amount of money that the person owes. Isn't that going to discourage lenders from making more loans?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about this, Bob, is that today, if you have a second home or a vacation home, if you've got multiple homes, those homes, the debts can be modified in foreclosure. It's only for people who have one home and are living in it and are in trouble where you can't have a modification of that loan in bankruptcy. So as the president said in Phoenix, this is just an issue of fairness, but we also have to do it right to make sure that we don't hurt the mortgage market. And what we've proposed, and we're working with Congress on, is a modification for loans that are in existence now, the ones that have caused all the trouble. We're not talking about applying this to loans going forward, and we think doing that means that it's not going to affect in any significant way mortgages in the future. It won't hurt the mortgage market going forward.
Do you at this point think the Congress will go along with that?
We're in discussions, and there seems to be growing consensus that this is an important part of the solution. I want to make clear, though, as well, we don't think that bankruptcy court is the answer to the problem. We think, and that's why we announced an aggressive plan this week to modify loans, we think we've got to get these things worked out before they ever get to bankruptcy, that's just a last resort.
All right, Mr. Secretary, I want to wish you the very best. I think everybody hopes that you're going to succeed on this. Thanks so much for coming. We'll be back to talk with some governors in just 1 minute. And we're back now with New Jersey Governor John Corzine, Ohio Governor Ted Strickland, and with us from Columbus, Ohio this morning, Governor Mitch Daniels of Indiana. He is in Columbus because the state airplane got a crack in the windshield this morning. They had to make a landing in Ohio, and through the courtesy and the expertise of the Ohio Highway Patrol, we got him to Columbus into the studio there. So, Governor, we're glad you're there with us, and so we'll start from there. I want to start with Governor Corzine because the numbers from your state, Governor, give us an idea just how serious the problems are that governors are facing these days. You expected your state sales tax to bring in $8.6 billion, I believe, and it looks like it's going to be about $653 million short of that. State income tax is going to fall $145 billion short of expectations.
$145 million, not billion, or we got a real problem.
I'm sorry. $1,045 million, and you're facing a $2.8 billion drop in budget revenue, which just gives people an idea of what a sour economy will do.
That's about 8 or 9% off of what we thought we were going to have.
Yeah. So you're going to get some money in the president's stimulus package. I take it that New Jersey's going to take the money.
I think we probably take that and make sure that we're educating our kids and providing health care as best we possibly can to the citizens of New Jersey. I think the president has done the right thing. I think it saves jobs. I think some of the other expenditures that are a part of the program on highways and bridges and the energy infrastructure of the country, I think we're going to create a lot of jobs, about 100,000 in New Jersey out of that program, combined with the things that we're already doing in the state with regard to our infrastructure and schools. I think it's actually going to make a big difference in the economy.
Governor Strickland, you got some big troubles out there in Ohio, especially unemployment. I take it you're going to accept the stimulus money.
Absolutely. I believe Ohio is going to get about $8.2 billion out of this package. We will use those resources to make sure that college tuition doesn't explode, that we are continuing to invest in elementary and secondary education to provide quality child care for our kids. We need these resources, and I'm very happy that the Congress and the President is providing this resource to our states. This is a very unusual time in the history of Ohio and in the history of the country. And this is not a normal economic up and down cycle that we're seeing. It's historic, unprecedented, and I think it's necessary and appropriate that the administration and the Congress is helping us out in these ways.
Governor Daniels, I guess one new expense you've got out there in Indiana, of course, is you've got to get the state airplane fixed. So that'd be... But you are in
it's
a
not just a job, it's an adventure.
There you go. You're in a much different position than some of these governors are because you actually have a balanced budget out there in Indiana. But I take it that might not last long because unemployment is just ballooned out there in recent months, has it not? So I take it you will be one of those taking the stimulus money?
Sure we will. Yeah, we are in a little different situation. We've come actually we were bankrupt when times were good, and have come to a position of all debts paid and budgets balanced and a pretty strong reserve. But it won't last if the erosion of the economy continues at the present rate. So we will take it. We will try to spend it prudently and wisely. In our case, we'll try to invest it for the future of our state. We don't have the holes to fill that other states do, but that doesn't mean that we can't I hope use it to leave permanent assets behind, whether they're roads and bridges or better prepared teachers, so that we're a stronger Indiana when this is over.
Governor, let me ask you, do you find it somewhat hypocritical that some of the Republican governors, I know Haley Barbour down in Mississippi, Bobby Jindal in Louisiana, just to name two, are saying that they're opposed to this and they don't want this money? So they're at least saying they don't want it, but some other governors are saying, well, we're opposed to it, but we're going to take the money anyway. What's going on that?
Well, first of all, I've studiously stayed out of the debate about the merits or demerits of this package. I think my job is simply to use these funds, which are a fact of life, for the best interest of our state and its future. But let's have some respect out of fairness for a very legitimate point of view. There are some very legitimate concerns about this bill, and it's massive amounts of spending on things that have nothing to do with stimulating the economy, massive amounts of money that everyone understands cannot possibly be spent for 2 or 3 years. It's smuggled in some very dubious policy, welfare without work, and a bigger government takeover of health care. So I just think that people in good conscience, my own Senator Dick Lugar's as bipartisan and thoughtful as any member of Congress, and he couldn't bring himself to support this particular bill. And so I think we ought to simply move forward, and each of us, as governors anyway, make the best decision we can for our own state.
How bad, governors, is this situation now? I mean, do you see any light at the end of this tunnel?
Well, I think as history has shown, we always get through tough economic times. Sometimes it takes longer than one would like to see for that problem, and you see unemployment get to levels that are unacceptable, and the foreclosure issue, which you were talking about, gets more burdensome. I think most people think we're going to be into 2010 before we see actual turnaround in the economy. Matter of fact, I think most everyone that I talk to is now stretching out their expectations on when you'll see a turnaround in the economy, and I think that makes it even more important that the federal government, which has the ability to finance these deficits, which states and our cities and local governments don't have the capacity, it's absolutely essential that we take those steps by the federal government to stimulate the economy. And by the way, some of this, about 1/3 of it's being done with tax relief. We're putting money into the pockets of middle-class families. We're helping families send their kids to college. We're doing all kinds of things to try to stimulate individuals, to stabilize the uninsured, the people that are unemployed, and then we're making these long-term investments which create jobs.
Governor Strickland, what's the big problem out in Ohio? Is it unemployment? Is it these foreclosures? What is it that...
The foreclosure problem is a huge problem in Ohio. Of course, unemployment is growing, and we expect it to continue to grow over the coming months. So all of it together, I repeat what I said to you, Bob, just a few moments ago. These are unprecedented circumstances. We have never been in circumstances quite like this, perhaps ever in the history of our country. A convergence of economic factors have come together. The housing crisis, the meltdown on Wall Street, our financial institutions under stresses and strains. That's why I believe the response of the federal government is so critically important. We cannot allow ourselves to disinvest in our kids, to disinvest in education, to dismantle those responsibilities that we have as governors that will enable us to overcome this recession and move into recovery.
What if one of the auto companies goes under? How will that impact out in your state?
Hugely, hugely. And it will not only impact the big three, it will impact all auto companies, including Honda and Toyota and all the others, because they have the same supply network. And this supply chain is very fragile, and if it starts to collapse, it could have a cascading effect that could, quite frankly, cripple an industry that has been so vital to the economy of our entire nation for so long. So it's very important that the auto industry get the help it needs to survive. And I've had officials from the Honda Corporation come to me, say to me, Governor, we're not usually in the business of advocating for our competitors, but it is so important that the auto industry and the big three be preserved. Otherwise, the economy of this country will suffer perhaps irreparable harm, and we just cannot let that happen.
Governor Daniels, let me ask you, Governor Schwarzenegger of California said today that what President Obama needs now is some teammates, and he's pretty much signed on to the president's plans. Now, a lot of people in your party are raising questions about it, saying no, voting no. What do you think Republicans ought to do from here on in?
Well, they ought to follow their conscience. Again, I've not seen it as my role in any way to criticize. We all hope that the president will succeed. This country needs this president to succeed, and I hope fervently that he will. As I said before, whether it's the stimulus package or the auto situation you just talked about. I certainly understand why people who have to vote aye or nay in conscience cannot bring themselves to support some of these things as presently constituted. You know, I don't know a single Republican who didn't really want to vote for a stimulus package, doesn't want to see the auto industry get back on its feet. But I'm also not going to criticize those who have misgivings or can't come to a positive conclusion on these particular bills.
Well, I have about 20 seconds here left. When do you see this turning around, Governor? Anytime soon, or is it going to be a year or so?
Are you asking me, Bob?
Yes, sir.
I would, you know, I'll defer to Corzine, my Wall Street expert. I think we all understand this is probably going to be worse before better and a long siege, but this is a great economy. The American economy has been resilient and surprised the skeptics over and over. It's going to do that again.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank each of you for coming by this morning. Not very good news here, but at least maybe we kind of laid out what's ahead. We'll be back with more in just a minute.
This portion of Face the Nation is sponsored by Chevron, Human Energy.
Finally today, a friend of mine drove through El Paso, Texas not so long ago and was stunned to learn that the weekend he was there, 28 people were killed, gunned down actually, in Juarez, Mexico, just across the river. More stunning was that most of the people took the news calmly, just another incident in a border town where such things now happen with increasing frequency. With the United States so focused on the economic crisis, it has gone virtually unreported here, but Mexico is dealing with a crisis of its own, a war among drug cartels that has left nearly 7,000 people dead just last year. The drug business in Mexico has become so big it is turning a $25 billion annual profit. The cartels have become so powerful that in some areas they have all but replaced the Mexican government. Just last week, the State Department warned U.S. citizens to exercise caution when traveling in the border areas and noted that the cartels sometimes engage each other and government forces in firefights that resemble military combat operations. As the new administration plans strategies to deal with threats to America's national security, we hear the usual faraway names and places: Iran, North Korea, Al-Qaeda, the border area between Afghanistan and Pakistan. We'll now add a new worry: the drug cartels in Mexico. They've been getting worse for a while now. We've just been looking the other way. Back in a minute. And that's our broadcast. We'll be back right here next Sunday on Face the Nation.
This broadcast was produced by CBS News, which is solely responsible for the selection of today's guests and topics. It originated in Washington, D.C.